All right, welcome back to Way of the Wrench, and on today's very special episode, I'm going to show you how to properly and safely use a two-post hoist or a two-post lift, and that way you can add that to your repertoire of cool things and equipment that you can use to become a gearhead. So let's get ready. Let's go. The part of being a gearhead is getting dirty and rolling around on the ground trying to figure out where to lift these cars from. So time to get ready. Alright, so I'm standing right in front of a two-post hoist, and they call it a two-post hoist because it's got two posts, right? 1, 2. Now each post has two of these movable arms, and they swing out, allowing you to move them underneath the vehicle to lift the vehicle and swing them out to be able to drive the vehicle out. We also have a little bit of telescoping action here where these can go in and out. Now this particular two-post hoist is an asymmetrical two-post, meaning that these arms have different lengths to it. So if you notice, the front is a lot shorter than the back, and that's just so that we can actually position the vehicle further back. It lets us have a little bit more room to open up the doors without hitting the post. Now these asymmetrical hoists also kind of place the post at a little bit of an angle, and that kind of makes it nice for opening the doors because you can actually open them a little wider so you can actually get in the vehicle and work a little bit easier. These lifting pads are where you're going to center in the proper lifting points for your vehicle, and these are adjustable so you can make it so that all four corners of the hoist are going to pick up the car at the same point. And if it's still not high enough or these arms are going to hit the rocker panel, you can also put in adapters. That way you can space it up a little bit higher and have clearance here on your rocker panel lips. Now on some trucks, the frame rail actually kicks up a little bit higher, so they do even sell taller adapters that you may have to put on only on the back arms. Now when using these adapters, I would never ever spin these out to full extension because you're kind of just asking for an accident to happen. You're kind of weakening how strong these are, and you can see that it's quite not supported in the inside. So when I teach this, I tell students to put all three of these pieces, spin them down so that all three of them are flush on the bottom, and that way when you got all four corners flush, you know that you're all starting off even. And then if you have to put in adapters to space it out, then you can do that. Now another type of lifting pad you may find on these two-post hoists is this kind of hinged lever type. And in this case there's 3 different settings. You can put everything down and have one height, or you can kick up this one which gives you about a 2-inch lift, or you can kick up this big one and that gives you about a 4 or 5-inch lift. And the big danger with using these types is if you have the front and the back so that these lifted pads are hinged in the same direction, meaning that if the vehicle was to get pushed backwards or forward and they could both hinge down, you could have the vehicle kind of go down and have it bounce off the hoist. So what you do is you always make sure that one of the front or the back is actually turned 180 degrees so that one wants to fall this way and the front one only wants to go forward, and they kind of counterbalance each other to make sure that the car will not tip off if you push it aggressively. Now before you lift your vehicle, it's always a good idea to check the capacity of your hoist. So this case, this is 10,000 pounds, and it's also only 2,500 pounds per arm. So meaning that for the front arms or the back arms, you should never have more than 5,000 pounds per axle. So now we need to look at the car and make sure we're not going to be over in that. Now for this 2003 Honda Pilot that we're going to lift, we got 2,700 kilos, times that by 2.2. We are nowhere near 10,000 pounds, so we're going to be good to lift on this vehicle. And if you've got one of these hoists, you're going to want to get it inspected annually by a certified lift inspector. That way everything is working properly and you know you're not going to have any issues safety-wise. And for yourself, a daily inspection that really only takes about a minute or two is that you check all the cables, make sure there's no fray damage, there's no loose parts. Make sure there's no leaks on your hydraulic system here and that the functions work properly. Make sure that the safety release latches operate evenly on both sides. Make sure that any of the mounting hardware is torqued down properly and nothing's loose. And make sure that these arms are free to move and that these pins are free to operate up and down so that once you get these arms up off the ground, those teeth, little gears will mesh and prevent those arms from moving. Now before you drive a car in on the hoist, you're going to want to make sure the area is clean and make sure that the arms are put to the side so that you can get the vehicle in. Now, it's not a bad idea to have a spotter or someone to help you guide you in to make sure that you are centered between the two posts and that the front of the vehicle is where it should be so that the weight of the car is balanced on the arms. So for example, if you have a front wheel drive car where the engine and the transmission and all the drive axles are up front, you're going to be more front heavy, and so you should keep that in mind where you're positioning the vehicle. If you have a rear engine, rear drive, then the weight is going to be closer to the back of the vehicle. So you have to position the vehicle accordingly and use the proper lifting points. Now, when you're guiding somebody in, do not stand right in front of the vehicle, because if somebody screws up and hits the gas instead of the brake, you're going to get run over. So stand to the side. That way, if you have to, you can kind of jump to the side and get out of the way. Otherwise, you're going to be helping with very simple hand motions. So come forward, straight. Start turning the vehicle that way, start turning the vehicle that way, and when you get to where they want them to stop, stop. Some hoists may have a spotting pad on the ground, and what this is helpful for is as the person is driving the vehicle in, when the front tires go over that little bump of the spotting pad, that gives the driver a heads up to know that you are generally in the right spot to start looking at where your lifting points are. However, depending on the vehicle, you may have to go a little forward or a little backward, but it's a really good general starting point. If you've got a two-post hoist, I would highly recommend spending the 10 or 20 bucks and order yourself an American Lift Institute lifting guide. It's quite an awesome book, and it comes in handy all the time when you're not sure. And what you do is you basically look up your make and model vehicle and your year, and it'll tell you what page it's on. And then once you find your vehicle, you can take a look and it will give you the exact points where you are supposed to lift off and any alternate lifting points for your vehicle. Generally, there's two types of vehicles on the planet. There's unibody and body-on-frame vehicles. And if you're not sure what I'm talking about and you want to learn about that, jump over to How to Jack Up a Vehicle, and I went into great detail on how to explain what those are, and that'll kind of give you a big heads up of where you're supposed to lift. Now, in general, unibodies on a two-post lift, you are going to position those lifting pads underneath the rocker panel lips, otherwise known as the pinch welds, and there's almost always some marks or an identifying pad or an arrow, something telling you where they want you to lift, and that's because they've reinforced that rocker panel lip in that area. Now, if you have a body-on-frame vehicle, it's going to be always on the frame rails. What you got to watch though is that you are picking a flat spot on the frame before it starts to go on an angle or on a corner, and get it as far forward and as far backward as you can. That way you're going to be stable. Actually, this is a 2003 Honda Pilot, which is a unibody. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to center my rocker panel lip right in the center of this lifting pad, and I'm going to put adapters in or space out and move out my lifting pad based off of how much clearance I need for the arm of the hoist not to crush this running board. So, and I'll show you more once we're underneath. Now, to make sure I have enough room to clear the arm on this running board, what I do is I take two fingers and space out how much from the lifting pad to the rocker panel lip I have to go. Then I kind of maintain that gap and check here to see if I'm going to crush that or not. And if I'm anywhere near close, then I'm going to put in a different adapter or lift the lifting pad a little bit more. So in this case, I got about an inch clearance, so it should be good. Now when you're using these hoists, we've got a momentary on switch, meaning that when I push it in, it's going to be lifting, and as soon as I let go, it shuts off. So I don't have to necessarily go and then crush something. I can kind of tap it and get it close and double check my lift points, etc. So this is for lifting, momentary on. This is for lowering, and all you do is you push the handle in towards the unit. And then up here is our safety release, which we'll talk about in a sec, but as soon as you have this all the way down, you've disengaged the left and right safety latches, and you're free to go down with the vehicle without it catching onto a safety and staying where it is. So at this point, I have the lifting pads where they should be, but I'm also kind of this far away, and on some vehicles, you might even be double that. So instead of just lifting till you hit and finding out you crushed something or your arm has crushed the rocker panel, you can get closer and double check it. It just takes a little bit extra time. Okay, I'm a little closer, so I'm going to check again. Now, once these arms are lifted up off the ground a couple inches, there are two gears that kind of mesh their teeth together, and that prevents the arm from swinging out, because you would not want this thing swinging out from underneath the car when it's up in the air. So if you've lifted it up and you're reconfirming your position points and you're off a little bit and you need to move that arm, there is a pin back here. You can lift it up, which disengages the teeth of the gears and allows you to position it where you need to. If you are going to do that, really make sure, double check that those teeth are back in mesh and that that arm is locked before you start lifting. So lift like this, and you can see that this arm is now movable, so I can position it where I want it to. Okay, once I've lifted those pads a little bit closer and I've double checked and confirmed everything is right underneath where I want it to, now I'm going to lift the vehicle up until all four wheels are off the ground about an inch or two. And then what I'm going to do is go to the front or the back of the vehicle and give it a rock check. Okay, vehicle's up off, so I'm gonna go check it. Okay, and then it doesn't matter if it's the front or the back, you basically just go to the front bumper, push it lightly up and down, and give it a little rock, and you'll know if it's stable. If you find that the front or the back is tipping right up off the hoist till the tires touch the ground, then you know that something is really, really wrong. You have the wrong lifting points, and most of the time it's because you've put the arms too close together and the car is literally tipping. Once you space them out and put them in the proper lifting points, that'll be fine. And thank God that you checked it now and not 6 feet up in the air. And remember, before we start lifting this up, you gotta make sure that the bay door is closed and locked so nobody's gonna open it up and you're not gonna crush the vehicle with the top of the bay door. And always make sure that your hood is closed and all the doors before you start lifting. All right, now we're ready to lift this vehicle up and do whatever work we need to. So if I'm doing tires and wheels and brakes, then I'm gonna put it at a nice comfortable height like this. But if I'm doing an underbody inspection and an oil change, things like that, I'm gonna go pretty much as high as I can. That way I'm not kind of working like this underneath the hoist. There is a reason why these hoists are great to work on, because you have that luxury to be able to stand up and work. So when I lift the hoist, I want you to hear, every couple seconds or so, you're gonna hear a loud clunk, clunk, and those are those safety latches. So every time you hear one of those clunks, that is an opportunity for you to lower the hoist onto those and to support the vehicle. So we're gonna go all the way up and just take a listen for those safety latches. Now on most two-post hoists, on the bar in between the two posts is kind of like a little sensor or a little switch. And what this is it's a little safety switch that will detect if the top of the vehicle is starting to touch that. It will kill the power to the lift mechanism so that you don't crush the top of the car on that beam. If you don't have it, then you really got to watch that you don't do that to a vehicle that's really tall. Now when you hear that, that's the hydraulics maxing out. You've reached full limit, so don't keep going, and keep your eye on the vehicle the whole time it's going up so you notice that when it stops. Now, this is not safe to get underneath yet. Right now, we are supporting this 6,000 pound vehicle with just the lifting cables and some hydraulic pressure. So if we have loss of hydraulic pressure or one of the cables snaps, this car could come down and crush us to death. So what we have to do now is place it down on one of those safeties that we heard clicking as we went up. And all we do is we watch the vehicle and we push this bar in, and we really have to make sure that the left and the right of the vehicle stop and we don't have one continue. And if you're not watching that happening and you keep going down, that's how you tip these cars out of the hoist. So now we are on those safeties, but we are still not completely 100% safe. I would triple, quadruple check your lifting pads. Make sure that you are centered on that lifting pad, not ready to come off. And also double check that these arms are not loose. They're not going to swing out on you. Take a look on the inside here to make sure that those geared teeth are meshed and that arm will not swing out on you. When you go to check the other side, do not go underneath the vehicle. Spend the time, go around the vehicle until you know this is completely safe. Okay, we're now safe, so I will get you underneath here with a light so you can take a look at where I lifted from on a unibody vehicle. Okay, looking at the back lifting point. So you can see we've got our arm here and we've got clearance between our running boards, and then the pad is centered on our rocker panel lip, and in this case they've actually got a kind of beefed up, kind of bent over lip, and that's the spot you're supposed to lift. Now what also made this one a little bit challenging is the fact that this running board bracket gets very, very close. It almost overlaps with where you're supposed to put this. So if you are trying to set this up, it might be a good idea to go a little further out, lift up the hoist and get it closer, and that way for sure you're not going to catch here and try to lift and damage the running board. You can always move this back just before you lift so that you are right on the right spot. For the front lifting point, you can see there's our running boards, there's our arm, there's some clearance here, and our lifting pad is centered right on this rocker panel lip, and same thing, we've got this kind of bent, kind of structurally stiffened up spot, and that's where they want you to lift it from. As we travel down the arm, you can really see those geared teeth that I was talking about. So this little half circle kind of piece has teeth on it that interlock with this gear, and that is what's preventing this arm from swiveling once you have it lifted up off the ground. Now when you lower the hoist all the way to the ground, these ends of the pins will touch the ground first, and it will force this gear to come out of mesh with this one here, and then once that happens, the arms are now free to swivel and move, and you can get them out from underneath the vehicle. Now that you have the vehicle up in the air, if you're going to be doing some kind of work where you're going to change out an engine or drop a transmission or a big heavy differential, you are upsetting the balance of that vehicle and have now changed where those lifting points need to be. So if you're doing something like that, you're going to want to invest in a couple pair of these under hoist jack stands. And what this does is allows you to support that side of the vehicle so that when you take that weight out, the other side doesn't tip down. Now, you always put this up to the car after it's been put on its safeties, not the other way where you put these underneath and lower the hoist onto it. So that's a no-no. And when you are done with these, just make sure that they come out. Now when you're getting ready to lower the hoist, you got to make sure that everything is cleared out, get everybody underneath, all your tool carts and your under hoist stands and your oil catch cans, all that stuff's got to come out. And then if you've made some mess, like you've got some oil dripped on the ground from doing an oil change, this is the time to clean it up. So go get your paper towel, give it a good wipe, make sure it's all nice and dry. If it's really bad, get some floor absorbent, put it down, sweep it back and forth. Because if you don't clean this up now, you are now lowering the car, you do some more work, finish up the oil change, and you drive off and you forget about that oily patch, and then that's just leaving an accident for somebody to slip on. So clean it up now before we start lowering the hoist. All right, now to lower this hoist, I have to announce to everybody around me that I am lowering a 10,000 pound vehicle so that nobody tries to kind of run underneath last second. So really loudly, going down, and then to get this thing to go down, I actually have to lift the vehicle up off the safeties. I then have to hold this safety latch disengage lever all the way down and hold it. And then as I push this lever in to start lowering, I have to maintain eye contact with this vehicle the entire way down. Because if one of those safety latches does not disengage and I'm busy yakking to a buddy while I'm lowering the car will continue to stay put on one side until it eventually tips off the hoist and falls down. Now, if I want to change the height to do tires, stop the movement first, let go of the safeties, and then a really safe way to doing this is going up until I hear those safety latches, go about a second past, and then those are the safeties that I'm going to put this on. Now I just lower it without this. Now I've got this at a lower place so I can do my tires and brakes and whatever I need to. But if I want to go all the way down, I just keep going with the safety latches. So I'm going down. And if you are going down and you want to get the vehicle out, so you've got those arms out of the way, you keep going, not till just the vehicle stops moving, but that the actual arms stop moving. That way those pins have disengaged the gears and we can get these out. Okay, once the arms stop moving, swing the arms out of the way. And then with the arms out of the way, it is now safe to move the vehicle out and continue on to your next job. So the goal of this video is to get you guys feeling comfortable about lifting vehicles on a two-post hoist. So I just showed you a unibody. I'm going to quickly go grab a truck that has a body on frame, lift it up real quick, and then just show you the lifting points from underneath so you have a really good idea of where you would lift for a two-post hoist. I'm going to go get it, okay? Okay, now that I had this body on frame truck lifted up, let's look underneath and show you where you were supposed to put your lifting pads on a two-post hoist. Up, it's really obvious to see that big, strong structural frame rail. And I've got my rear pad positioned right in the center of that, and I have made sure that it is still on a flat spot of the frame, not where it starts to curve up over the wheel arch like there. And I don't have to have it under any of the suspension stuff. I can just put it right on the frame as far out as I can. Okay, and then for the front here, you can see that I've got my pad centered on that frame rail. You can see it's just continued from the back all the way to the front. And I have it as far forward as I can, as long as it's still flat here. That way it's very stable, and I haven't gone into the corner or where it starts to angle up for the wheel arch, which would be quite unstable. Now this truck is designed well, so you can see that we've got all of our fuel lines and brake lines and emergency brake cables and all that kind of stuff is up and away from where we possibly might put a jack stand or the hoist pads or some safety stands. So we got no any risk of having anything pinched or damaged. But on some vehicles, they have these things really quite close. And so there's a danger that you might be able to pinch that and squish a brake line, etc. So watch that with your vehicle, unibody or body on frame. And then once again, kind of repeat and review from the last video where I showed you about body on frame and unibodies. Make sure that you are lifting a body on frame vehicle by the frame rail. Do not go off this rocker panel lip pinch weld. It is not designed to pick up the whole vehicle there, and you will cause a lot of damage. Bam! There's another video from Way of the Wrench, this time on how to properly and safely use a two-post hoist, most commonly found in an automotive shop.